see loads of parents who really worry about the fact that their babies cry all the time. And most of the time there's absolutely nothing to worry about, because crying is what babies do. Babies cry to communicate. They cry to let us know that they're hungry, that they're tired, that they need their nappy changing, or just that they want some attention. But sometimes when a baby cries, it might be a sign that something's wrong. Interestingly, mums often can tell, dads not so much, when their baby's cry suggests something is wrong. Mums have got a sixth sense knowing that their baby is uncomfortable or in pain just by the tone of the cry. And I have to say, as a dad myself, I was always rubbish at working that out, but I listened to mums. What about babies who cry a lot and won't settle with attention or some food? What else could be going on? Is there anything you should be worried about? The most worrying thing in a crying baby is the possibility of infection being around. If your baby has an unusually high-pitched cry, is inconsolable, has an associated fever, think, could this be infection? And think about getting them checked out by a doctor. If that cry is worse during or after feeds, particularly if you've just put them down and they won't settle when they're lying flat, it could be a thing called reflux. Reflux means that milk is coming back up the wrong way, and it also means that stomach acid can be coming back up the wrong way, and that can give babies exactly the same symptoms that you'd have if you had heartburn. And so they cry and cry and cry, and when you pick them up, they're happier because gravity is keeping the acid down. Reflux is fairly easy to treat. We use things to thicken the milk up, and you can talk to your health visitor or your doctor about these. If your baby is just vomiting, which can be a sign of reflux, but they're not particularly irritable or unhappy, we tend not to do anything about it. We don't want to give medicines to children unless they absolutely need them. And it can be a major pain with a lot of vomiting, and you need to get through a lot of washing powder, but it's best not to medicalise it and overtreat. But what about those babies that just won't settle at all? They may have symptoms like reflux, where they're worse when they lie down, they're worse after feeds, but in between times they just don't settle either, and they cry constantly and they seem really unhappy. I see babies like this, and I see mums that look as if they haven't slept for weeks because they probably haven't. And in those babies, a number of them may have a condition called cow's milk protein allergy, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. The great thing for me as a paediatrician looking after a baby with cow's milk protein allergy is that if I'm right, the response is dramatic. Within 2 or 3 days sometimes, mums feel like they've got a new baby, and that's a wonderful feeling for everybody involved. The babies particularly feel better because they're on a milk that they don't feel ill with. Now, unfortunately, sometimes they get better for a few days and then get worse again, because what happens is that they get sensitized to the smaller bits of protein, and those situations mean that we have to move on to another milk where the protein's broken down into even smaller bits, and they cope with that. Now, the bad news about cow's milk protein allergy is that the milks that we use are very expensive, and they cost probably twice as much as normal formulas. However, the good news is that if you need them at the moment on medical grounds, you can get them on prescription, which is great. We don't recommend using soya milk below the age of 6 months, and that's because soya protein, bizarrely, is actually very similar in structure to cow's milk protein. But after 6 months, you could try soya milks. What about in breastfed babies? Because breastfed babies can have cow's milk protein allergy as well. Sounds a bit odd, given that they're getting human milk, but if mums have a significant amount of dairy in their diets, then actually little bits of that cow's milk protein can come out in breast milk, and babies who are breastfed can also have cow's milk protein allergy, and in those situations we suggest that mums go dairy free too. One of the good things about cow's milk protein allergy is that 95% of children with it will grow out of it by the age of 3, so it's not there forever. What that does mean though is that when it comes to weaning, we need to get children and mums seen by our dietitians so that you can get advice on dairy-free weaning and maintaining a balanced diet. And usually sometime in the 2nd year of life, we'll start challenging children with dairy products to see if they've grown out of it or not. But it's not a lifelong condition. But it's probably quite under-recognised, and it's labelled as colic, it's labelled as reflux. But if your baby is irritable all the time and never settles, think, could this be a cow's milk protein allergy? It's more common than we realise. But Most babies that are crying because that's what babies do. And the majority of the time, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. But I hope you've got a little bit of a better idea now of when you need to be worried.